welcome to another episode of the Impro podcast. My guest today is Maike Preissing. So you're a psychologist and synesthesia artist. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. I'm a psychologist and I work with neurodivergent adults, and I'm neurodivergent myself and I experience synesthesia. And for those that don't know what that is a neurodivergence where your senses cross. So when I, for example, feel pain, I don't only feel the pain, but I also see the pain as colors and moving shapes and textures in my mind's eye. And that's just one of the many forms of synesthesia. It's not a pathology, it's just a known variant of our brain. And there are over 80 different forms, and I experience around 10. That's what I do professionally. I host a podcast, Let's Talk Synesthesia, where we talk about all things synesthesia, neuroscience related, and mental health. And then I see my clients and I'm on Instagram. When I'm a synesthesia artist, I turn all those fun, colorful things in my head into digital art.
Great. And so what is your relationship with music? Can you see music? When you listen to a piece of music, what is that experience like for you?
There's not that clear of an answer for me. So I think it's twofold. The synesthesia music relationship is I do see sounds. I don't see color for voices, but for sounds, like if there would be an alarm or just any sound really, I would see it in my mind's eye as color, and it can be distracting, it can be nice. It is kind of beautiful. It's a bit like the old Windows media player in my mind's eye. It's not for every sound, and especially piano I always love because it has this purpley black bubble look. It's amazing. I'm curious what I'm going to see today.
I'm going to play you a piece of improvised music, and I want you to tell me a bit about what you experience. I haven't put any work into it previously. I haven't composed it.
Okay, is it inspired by how you feel at the moment and our conversation?
There might be an element of that just because it's just happened, but I'm not consciously thinking about it. What did you think of that?
When you first started playing, I immediately saw myself at a cliff, and it's one that I actually visited, but it looked much darker, like much more foggy and dark and almost grayscale. It was more towards the night and it looked beautiful. It was very wide and the music was very white. If you imagine it like a landscape photo, I would see that kind of landscape, looking out to sea, standing on that cliff, but the music was like playing around that photo. There was lots of white sounds. And then a bit later you played those, and I have no musical vocabulary, but they looked like from the left corner they went up to the right middle. They were like that kind of bit, and they looked much more purple, like the round bubble sounds that I usually see for piano. And then it became just a bit lighter and more colorful.
Are these colors like a filter?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I closed my eyes, but even if my eyes would be open, I wouldn't see it out there. It's not projected synesthesia. I see it in my mind's eye. I listened to it and I just watched the images develop, and that was nice. Can you imagine that? Do you see color by any chance?
Okay. Sometimes. I made a documentary when I was at uni about the relationship between music and colour. There's all sorts of theories. Some of the ancient Greek philosophers found this kind of connection between music and colour. And then Isaac Newton, I think, had this colour wheel that he linked with the circle of fifths, which is a circle in music harmony. People have developed various formulas for converting notes to colours. I got this composer to compose for certain colours. So what was his take on red and green and blue? But yeah, it was quite a interesting film to make. Used lots of archive footage, quite experimental vibe to it. Do you have certain connections which are absolute for you? Just connections that are really strong?
So I think the purple piano sounds is one thing. And then for other synesthesia forms, I experience grapheme color synesthesia, which is the connection of letters and numbers having a color. And that is so stable. Like when I was 7, my mom made me write them down and they are the same still. So A is red, B is blue, C is white, and it just goes through the whole Latin alphabet. And we were actually able to see this synesthesia form on a brain scan, which was so fun. And then another one is sequence space, where you see sequences like time or numbers in the space around you. And for me, it's mainly the year. So I see the year as a time beam and it starts at my left eye and then it goes in the distance. For other people, the year might be a circle or a square or more of a race card or an organic shape. Sometimes it goes around their bodies or it's in front of them.
Are you up for telling me a story then? And I will break the story down into sections and improvise a soundtrack.
It's the year 2001, and I live in a small German village, and I'm on my way to school, where my mom takes me every morning. And I'm excited, but also I feel like primary school is a lot. It's very loud. It is overstimulating. And the previous days, my mom and I spoke about letters having colors, and she is so kind and empathetic and listening and taking me seriously. So she asked me to write down all the letters and their colors. And I did, and I found that the easiest task to do. Only the letter Q was a hard one because it seemed to not reveal its color, and that kind of made me feel like I'm lying. It made me feel like an imposter. If not every letter has a color, then I'm making the other ones up, even though they feel like the most natural thing one could imagine. And on our way to school that day, my mom said, "Let me ask your teacher if they know anything about this. This must have a name. I know you don't make it up." So we go to the head teacher and they don't know what we're talking about. They are telling my mom that I'm just remembering letters from a book. There's nothing behind it and it will just go away. My mom just has to be patient. It takes another year or year and a half until my mom finds the right resources online. And Google was not the same, obviously, in 2002. She finds the word synesthesia. So we are so excited having a name for this and feeling like this is a superpower, a gift, because it helped me learn vocabulary and words and spelling. And we go back to school and tell my teacher what this is. And my mom tells him to keep that as a secret, but it might be important for him to know as a teacher how Maike learns. And he promised to keep it a secret. But then the lesson started. And the teacher said he has an announcement and he wants me to come to the front of the classroom, to the board, and tell everybody about my synesthesia. And he made me stand there as an 8 or 9-year-old and explain this very thing that he just promised my mom to not tell anybody, to the whole class. What I do remember next is that the kids were very excited and just happy about. They treated it as a nice thing. And he dodged a bullet there because this could have been the start of bullying. When I came home and told my mom, she was furious because she knew that there was an agreement and I didn't know about that. Yeah, he just lied to her for his own entertainment.
And how did you feel when you found out that he lied to her?
I think it's horrible. I think it's mad. Why would you do that? Yeah, I don't think you can trust him.
I'm going to play some music. You're walking along the road to school. I guess this is like any other day. And then I'm going to try and get a sense of this connection between letters and colour. And I don't know how I'm going to do that on the piano, but we'll find out.
We're going to see. It's going to be synesthetic.
So musically, I'm going to try and get a sense of you telling the class about your synesthesia.
Yeah, my heart was probably racing.
So there's a kind of nervousness there. And then maybe after that, this sense of betrayal, the fact that he shouldn't have done that, really.
Yeah, I think for me, the way the story goes is like, it's just nice, it's fun. We realize that it's a good thing. And then there's this moment of stress, mistrust, and then it turned out okay just because the world was nice, but not because of that person.
All right, we go then. How was that music? Did that do anything for you?
Yeah, it definitely did. It was beautiful and light and playful. I think I could see that. It was also more colorful. Those sounds were like bubbling on the bottom of the image, like boiling water, maybe just without the heat and stuff. It's more like maybe a bubble bath, that kind of thing. So it wasn't all over my mind's eye. It just came up from the bottom.
I was trying to get the sense of connections between the letters and colours by playing two notes together, da-ding, and then another set of two notes, and then playing the first set of two notes. It was, to me, a musical way of explaining these associations.
Yeah, no, that's a very creative solution. It's not easy to put something multimodal into one medium, so I can see how it would be really difficult to do that. I didn't pick up on that specific thing, but I did see like letters floating around. I'm not sure if it was because of the music or just like recapping the story. I think you did a good job capturing this little time travel.
Did you get the sense of betrayal towards the end, the sense of unease?
Yeah, as the music got darker, there was more like dark blue, dark green, and that I'm pretty sure that's where you placed the betrayal. So the color of the sounds, the mood and the atmosphere changed accordingly.
And this sense of nervousness building up to presenting to the class, you're telling the class this sort of revelation, really. So I tried to get a build-up of that, which was before the betrayal. So you said you saw some dark colours. What kind of colours?
Dark blue and dark green. So at the beginning they were smaller and like maybe more bouncy, whereas towards the betrayal part it was more of a bigger cloud of a sound. So it had more weight to it. It wasn't as light and many little parts. It was more like one more heavier cloud of like dark green, dark bluish. I think one thing that the listeners won't hear, but one thing that is important to my synesthesia is I can see you play and I can hear you play probably through the other microphone. So I can hear your hands tapping the piano. So there is the...
Is that distracting?
It is a bit distracting. There was like a visual pollution to the piano music because I could hear, and it's not every tap, it's more the one that you do with a bit more force when you get a bit more just faster. And then those gray squares would pop up in the middle of what you're playing. And I tried to ignore them and erase them, but it's inconsistent, so I can't really. They just pop up.
Okay. Next time I can mute my microphone.
Yeah, let's try that.
So do you have another story that you can tell?
Yeah. In summer this year, my family and I went to Norway, and I wanted to really capture this country. I knew I was excited to be outdoors, to be on that motorboat, to go to those islands on those forest walks and to jump into the cold fjord. And I wanted to capture all of this from a synesthetic perspective. So I was very much watching my mind's eye from the moment I got there. And one of the things I vividly remember is the smell of raw fish. When my brother and his friends went out fishing, they brought back salmon and all these other fish that they then cut. And just for the sake of my synesthesia experience, I went in and had a sniff of this very fresh fish, which is, as a vegetarian, quite a thing to do. And I just saw those turquoise, teal, greenish colors popping up in my mind's eye. And some of the shapes were reflecting the structure of a fish's skin. So that was one thing. And then we went out fishing every day. I didn't fish, but I was watching the motorboat sound, which was very gray and white and really loud, of course. And it was so prominent. So it was much more pleasant when we arrived to that island where we were just walking through the forest, and I could just pay attention to all those bird sounds that were so just lovely. When the trees are very high and there are lots of birds, they're far away, and the sounds do look like confetti, and I love that. I love that most about a forest, when I close my eyes and I hear the bird sounds from all directions, and they all have a different color, and when they're far enough away, they really just look like confetti popping up right and left, and that is so fun to watch.
Nice. So I'm going to try and get a sense of this, just of your experience, really.
Yeah, it's a hard job you're doing, I can tell you. I would have no idea how to do that. But we had the fish, the motorboat, and lots of confetti birds.
And so the fish was a kind of, you said green, kind of teal effect? The raw fish, like the smell of raw fish.
Teal is a color between like green and blue, right?
I think so. I'm colorblind, so it doesn't help.
That's a piece of context.
I have an idea of what it is, I think.
Yeah, so your mind's eye is also colorblind.
It must be.
Yeah. That is so interesting because it is two different things. You can have color synesthesia even though you're colorblind. It's interesting what the brain does, yeah. But I think that's a very important piece of context because I'm already giving you a hard time with this synesthesia stuff, but you being colorblind is really like we're trying to communicate, but there is not that much common ground for this specific perception.
Back to the story then. You've got this fish and this colour that you described, and then you had the motorboat, the sound of the boat.
Grey and white and bulky looking, fast moving. A bit like the propeller of a motor.
And then you've got the confetti birds. And you said that each bird had a different colour to you.
Maybe the same type of bird would have the same sound, but I'm just not into birds, so for me it's just like confetti, just different color, different shapes.
And by confetti you mean it was falling?
They maybe don't fall to the ground, but they pop up and then they fade, and while fading they might sink a bit, but then they disappear. It's not like they're coming down.
Okay, I'm going to play like 3 different sections and hopefully you'll be able to guess what.
Yes, sounds good. Oh, I loved it. I felt like you took us on a whole journey. Like the 3 parts were very clear to me, even though the colors of the first part were maybe not like the fish color, but how would it be? That would be a big coincidence if you would match those colors. Still, I felt like we're at the water where I felt like it was very naturey. And then the middle part, you captured it really well. The fast motorboat sound and just how low it would be. There were some higher pitched notes, and I realized it's so interesting. Also for the confetti bird sounds at the end, you can only do that with high pitched sounds. There is no way to have dark pitched confetti, at least for my synesthetic understanding. Like the lower sounds, especially on a piano, they linger more, don't they? They have more of a whole body, and they don't stop as much, so they're more like a cloud. Whereas the higher pitch, they're a bit more like needles. They start and end. They don't linger as much.
So the waves, the sound waves at the bottom, the low ones, physically take up more space than the higher ones. So therefore your mind knows this in some ways. So if you're imagining something to do with the sound.
Yeah, they take much more space, and they also don't have edges that are as sharp as they are for the higher pitch ones. If you would press one of the lower ones, they would consume also the visual space for longer. Whereas the smaller ones, they pop up like the bird sounds. They pop up and then they fade away. They're more defined and more colorful and brighter. And you captured that very well.
And this sense of the motorboat, I was just playing the same pattern over and over again, trying to get a sense of that sound, because it's very repetitive and there's a rhythm to it.
The same pattern really reflected that, because it is like the same sound for 15 minutes when you're in a boat. Yeah, that matched it very well.
And then for this kind of confetti bird, trying to go for this descending pattern.
You did. I think that was amazing. It's so interesting to merge two brains, but all colors really. Yeah, they're just, one's green, one's red, one's blue. I'm saying that, but now I know you're colorblind, so I should be a bit more descriptive maybe.
I'm colorblind for only certain colors, so that means just different type.
Okay.
For example, some people will see lots of different types of green, and I'll see a few shades, but particularly blues and pinks a bit as well. It's not really a problem, I think it's just less coloured.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So what did you get out of this podcast?
I think, very interesting to explain synesthesia from a new perspective, from a music-centered perspective. I think that is very interesting. Also, talking about your own story in a way that will be translated into music. It makes you think in music. The story is going to be music. So what are the emotions? What would I pick? What does reflect the story in my head? So I think that is an incredible facet that I haven't encountered in my music-less life. So thank you for taking me on that journey today. And I think it is just a fantastic idea, the concept of your podcast. I love it.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
If you want to check out Maike's podcast, it's called Let's Talk Synaesthesia, and it's available on Spotify.
Join us again for another episode of ImproPod. Thanks for listening.